Hello and welcome to this episode of Career Shorts hosted by the Antibody Society, where we talk to a whole host of individuals from various sectors, including industry and academia, to gain their insight into how PhD students and postdocs can navigate the tricky world after their studies and contracts. In this episode, we talk to Dr. Li Zhou, a principal scientist at AbbVie. Now, these episodes and more are all available directly on the Antibody Society website or accessible through our social media pages. If you're watching on YouTube, then drop us a comment or just pop us an email. We welcome your feedback and any suggestions you might have. Now, we hope you enjoy this and find this a valuable exchange, so let's get into it. Okay, so hi Li, welcome to Career Shorts. Would you like to start by giving us a bit of background and introduction of who you are?
Hi, good afternoon, I guess, to your time. My name is Li. I was originally from China. I came to US to study chemistry, particularly protein chemistry, biochemistry, under the guidance of Professor Zhou. My research at that time was to discover and optimize small molecule inhibitors for protein-protein interactions. After graduating from graduate school, I joined the industry. I got the offer from AbbVie and start working there since then. Now I have been with AbbVie for over 5 years now, I think 6 years. It's been a great journey to practice my skills and seeing how it apply to our workflow, but also learning new skills from people around me. So that's a little background from me.
Yeah, and what does it mean to be a principal scientist at AbbVie? And I saw on your LinkedIn that you're working in discovery biologics. So for someone who's not familiar with the term biologics, would you be able to expand a bit on that?
So I spent a number of years working the discovery biologics. So primarily this function in that capacity, I work with different therapeutic areas, so different disease experts, leveraging our antibody discovery and engineering platform and trying to identify one or two promising molecules for additional development, right? So I'm in the capacity, it's pretty much very research oriented. So if you think about looking for that one or two molecule from millions of molecules to start with, right? So you will have different kind of assays inside the screening funnel, right? So each assay or multiple assays at any given time to help you guide you the selections of antibody. Along the way, then you will find it's like shopping on Amazon, right? You start to put in the different filters where it was appropriate and to help you guide the final decisions, whether it be purchasing on Amazon or the selections of the promising lead molecules for additional clinical development or additional CMC development. In my current role, then I moved a little bit downwards to the CMC development. Particularly my function is analytical development. So here I will work with our colleagues in process development as well as quality functions to help establish a set of methods that helps the overall CMC development of biologics. If you go down a little bit further, then you will go into the manufacturing and then quality for CMC line, that product development line. And then in parallel, there will be another line called clinical development where people usually with a medical background will be design and implement the clinical trials. The finish line, of course, is the regulatory approval and seeing the launch of your assets, and then eventually gets to the patient, that the patient will have the right access to the right molecule. So that's the goal.
Yeah. And what brought you into the world into this world, and what excites you most about what you do?
Yeah, I think what excites me most about is number A is with any kind of job, you get this satisfaction if you get things done and successfully and seeing the end results being produced, especially when you can actually leverage your existing skills that you spent so many years in graduate school or some postdoc if you have any, to being implemented, right? So, but also another layer of satisfaction from this job is you get to work with people from a very diverse set of backgrounds. So their skills definitely serves as a good teaching for your own enrichment. So on that level, it's also very satisfying if you're curious by nature. The third level will be that this job working in the pharmaceutical industry that is different from other industry, in my personal opinion, is that the end result is, of course, to improve patients' lives. So that is very, in my opinion, is very impactful for the world.
Did you see yourself in this sort of position, in this sort of role when you were fresh out of graduate school, or was this kind of a bit of a surprising turn of events for you?
I wouldn't say I plan to join the industry or versus academia or any kind of other career options. Graduate school is a really long process, right? So over the course, you definitely have to explore different career options. And I also encourage, people, especially in their early years of graduate school, definitely understand what are the different options that align with your passion, because you're gonna spend the multiple decades of your life doing something. Might as well just pick something that you're truly interested about, right? I'm sure if your interests align with your career choice, then you're gonna have a great time and you're gonna be very successful in whatever you choose to do.
Yeah, and following up on that, how did you get your position? So you mentioned that you were offered a position from AbbVie, but did you actively seek this out? Or because I mean, a lot of advice that you hear from people in career positions and whatnot is, start networking from day one, start kind of getting that exposure. And I was wondering, was this something that you did, or how did you come about to your position?
Yeah, I definitely heard that scenario as well. Start networking. I think the goal of networking is not merely just by getting connected with someone, but really to understand whether that career option is good for you or not. So in my personal preference, I wouldn't want to start networking from day one just because I still need to do some soul searching within myself first, just to, and it's also more efficient for everybody's time, right? So once you had done that kind of homework, then definitely feel free to reach out, right? Whether it be like, just a coffee chat, or you actually find an internship if you're lucky in the industry, I think that would be greatly helpful. One of the things that I think could differentiate one graduate student from the other or postdoc when they're applying for industry job is that if they had some kind of experience in the company, no matter whether it's just gonna be a very short time, at least they have that exposure. When they are applying for a formal job, they understand what that job requires to a better extent than others who doesn't have that kind of exposure. So I think definitely leverage that kind of opportunity. And going back to my personal experience, I actually don't have too many networking. Before I find this job, I just apply. I saw this opportunity aligned with my skills, aligned with my experience. The type of project I worked on in graduate school aligned very well with that job, so I just applied. And I actually had to relocate from East Coast to Chicago for that job, but it turns out to be a great decision in my mind. Hope that one helps.
And what challenges, I guess, have you faced in, you know, do you feel that your PhD set you up well for kind of progressing through these past several years that you've been at AbbVie, or yeah, how challenging has it been transferring from academia into industry?
Mm-hmm. To answer your question upfront, I don't feel like too many challenges, technically speaking. And also in part it's because I had a great manager and he's also a very great teacher. That's not gonna be the case in every scenario, but you know, if you had the luck to be paired with a good manager, you know, he's gonna help you transition into the job. Technically, of course, you will already be very capable for that position, otherwise they won't hire you, right? But I think in terms of other type of skills, you know, that's something that still requires continuous improvement even today, or even when you're into your 2 decades of work, right? So there's always room for improvement for those type of set of skills.
Yeah, and a quick follow-on from that one again. What are the expectations from industry for, you know, people entering? Is there a preference for PhDs or postdocs? Is there an expectation of, you've partially answered this anyway, of knowing particular skills, or is it more valuable to kind of have the kind of the growth mindset where you have the potential more so than maybe the specific skills?
Mm-hmm. So when you say industry, it's really a broad term, right? So even in industry, we have different sizes of company. We on one spectrum, there is huge companies. Then you come with this mid-sized biotech firm, and then you have the the smallest size, the startup, right? So usually like a academic spin-off. So for the different size of the company, there are different type of expectations and different set of skills that may fit better, and personality-wise as well. So just to give one example, we don't have time to go through all of the scenarios, but just give one example. In small startup, especially for academic spin out, then industry versus academia doesn't really make much difference, right? You will still be working with potentially a group of graduate students, postdoc, and maybe a professor, right? So, and you know, working in the incubator environment is not gonna be, it's not going to be that different than working in the academic lab. On the other spectrum, working for a big company, then within the big company, there are different functions, right? So depending on what functions you're in, the expectations and skill sets also requirement is also kind of different, right? So the most translatable function in a big company will be in a discovery organization, because that's essentially what you're being trained to do in the academic lab, right? So you have an idea, inception, and then you carry out your study design, and you probably implement most of the study execution, and finally communicate to the outside world, whether it be the oral format presentation or the publication. In industry, in the discovery organization, it's pretty much aligned with that kind of workflow. Where you will have a set of group of scientists responsible to come up with targets, and then they will, you know, work with other group of scientists to design how to come up with a molecule to address that target, to do the proof of concept, testing the petri dish, testing the animal, and then eventually make recommendations to whether we want to pursue that molecule, right? Whether that's aligned with our commercial and as well as clinical development strategy. So in that regard, then it's very similar. But in other functions, for example, in CMC development, where your academic experience might not be so much in line with, you know, what's being doing in a sort of, industry setting, right? So, but don't worry about it. Sure, there are other, jobs require the entry level PhD or postdoc that you can just fit in, and then your previous academic skill set will align with the job requirement. You just need to accumulate the experience after working a few programs that you can quickly pick it up.
Okay, so that's quite interesting. It seems that there's, for whatever skill set and experience and things that you want to do, there seems to be variety of career paths that you can take depending on that.
Yeah, exactly. And to a large extent, depending on what you're studying in the graduate school, right? So if you're very biology focused versus very chemical engineering focused, that will largely determine, what is the easiest path or the most logical entry point for you to break into the industry.
Yeah. And I guess we can tailor it specifically to antibody discovery and development. But what skills do you think and have been your experience are the most valuable for people entering this field? And especially, what would you have said to, for example, to your younger self to have been better prepared to enter? I guess I say this in the sense that, especially now, it seems that it's becoming like very interdisciplinary in terms of, I guess the obvious example is kind of technology, so AI and machine learning, and the blending of biology and biochemistry and immunology. So, do you have any suggestions on that?
Yeah, so I think maybe two big category. One is if you wanted to work in antibody discovery, you can be very versed with certain disease, become the disease expert. So that probably will require a lot of biology background, right? So in that aspect, then you can work from proposing targets and work with antibody scientists on that. Another big category is the antibody technology itself, right? So in that regard, then it's best if you have the opportunity to have a project so that you can work on to generate the antibody, screen it, characterize it, engineering it, and then figure out what is the best way to find potentially the best-in-class molecule, right? In terms of each keyword I just mentioned, there are a lot of directions that you can take, right? So take antibody engineering, for example, then, is it possible for you to, get more exposures in, just in general protein chemistry, protein engineering, and then so that you will be more capable when it comes to design a molecule. Whether it be the traditional approach, structure-based, or be model-based, or just being combinatorial library screening, probability-based. So those are all current practice. I wouldn't say necessarily trying to chase, the hottest field, right? Because I think something comes and goes. I think it's good to be updated in the field.
Yeah, it's great. And then I guess because I think we're running quite close and you've got more to do for the rest of your day, I'll wrap this up with asking what advice you would give to people looking to develop their careers and generally for the future ahead coming.
Yeah. So I don't think I'm qualified to give anybody advice, but I do ask for people's advice, and I'm happy to share what I heard, right? So I think if science is what you pick to, as your career, I assume that you already are a, curious person at your core. So that's a good thing, right? So that already determines you're gonna, have that inert qualifications. But also, being able to have a structured problem-solving skills is very critical, because a lot of knowledge you accumulate in the graduate school, just a number of years, it's probably over time you probably don't remember, right? So speaking from the personal experience is that I think, having that structured problem-solving skills, how to find the problem and set up the framework of addressing the problem, and being able to quickly study and get familiar with that topic, that problem, and then execute what needs to be executed. And on top of that, if you can marry that problem-solving skills with good communication skills, right? So then you can, present your problem-solving process, your problem-solving results to a broader audience, whether it would be within your company or outside the company, that will actually be more impactful, right? And then lastly, I think it will be very important for you to know is the time management skills, right? That's something I still need to work on. Figure out what's important, what's not, and then to what extent should you devote your time to. Those are all, something that I think we don't readily learn. We'll have a class, a lecture to learn, but I think it'd be very beneficial to your future work, speaking from my experience.
And that's all for this interview. Thank you very much for listening, and more importantly, we hope you found today's session insightful and valuable. If you'd like to access more interviews like this and other great content, then please check out the Antibody Society's website. Membership is free for all students and postdocs, and we have some really great value for money memberships for our academic and industry partners. Feel free to share this video and come check us out on our social media pages like LinkedIn and Twitter. If you'd like to connect with today's speaker or reach out to us, then check out some of the details in the description box below, and thank you again for listening.